trust me?
We're going to go ahead, chat, and get right into it. My review for The Last of Us, Episode 4. Now, like I said, this is not going to be a spoiler episode at all. I might mention some scenes, might compare certain scenes to, like, the game. Because I have to admit, right at the top, chat, this was, one, definitely tonally very different from Episode 3, where we focused on the characters of Bill and Frank. And that was a lot more expanded from the original game. We kind of saw their lives. And I personally thought that was a beautiful episode. Loved it. From the writing and the production and, and the acting. I thought it was really, really special. And now we kind of return to, like, to the main plot line, focusing more on, Joel and Ellie, played by Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, respectively. And this is tonally, like I said, very different from Episode 3, where Episode 3 showed you, like, even in this world filled with horror and sadness and viciousness, like, there still are some aspects where you can find beauty in it. And we kind of saw that with the relationship and this nearly 20-year romance between, Bill and Frank. Here, this episode reminds you, like, humanity can be, like, really, really shitty. It can be awful, chap. And that's what kind of Joel is trying to teach Ellie. Even though, she's definitely competent, she's not, she doesn't know a lot about the world. I mean, last episode, she's like, I've never been in a car before. This is exciting. I don't know, what's this thing you put in? It's a seatbelt. I was like, wow, it's just like a spaceship, She's kind of wide-eyed. She's a little wise, but she's still a little wide-eyed. She's very much a kid. And, people are familiar with the game. This felt like those scenes when you're just playing it, when you're going from place to place, from building to building, exploring while Joel and Ellie are having a conversation. I mean, that's what this episode feels like. Those sections from the game. And we're establishing more of a rapport between Joel and Ellie in this episode. They're warming up to each other. I mean, for those of you who have played the game, I mean, we finally see the debut of the joke book. Which Ellie uses on Joel on many occasions, and his reactions are our reactions, Chad. Some of these jokes are they're rough, but I really like how Belle Ramsey, despite her circumstances, Ellie's circumstances, she it's like these moments of, oh yeah, we just saw something horrible, but here's like a joke that is just all puns. And you kind of see Joel's reaction. It's almost like, it's kind of like calming, and it's like normal, and I like that. Again, they're really doing a good job of establishing the relationship, because originally I was kind of not exactly nervous, but I was like, I don't know. Like in Episode 1, I thought Pedro Pascal was doing a great job, but Bella Ramsey, again, not her fault. They didn't give her a lot to do, and I thought, like, in Episode 2, she got more to do here, and obviously Episode 3 we focused more on Bill and Frank, but here it's like, okay, we finally got like a really long form episode where we're focusing on both of them, and I'm like, I really like how this relationship is progressing, how Joel is warming up to Ellie, and Ellie's warming up to him. I thought that was very, very good. There's a whole other aspect of this episode where we're also trying to, I think, expand and humanize the Raiders, which, we so often fought in the games. We're introduced to now I believe these are new characters. This character named Kathleen, who is this leader of this raiding camp that took over one of these government, compounds, one of the walled cities, and it's her it's her rules, and if you don't follow them, well, you're probably gonna end up dead. And it's also setting up, obviously, another section from the original game where we're going to be introduced to Henry and Sam, who are being tracked by this group led by Kathleen. And I think that was fun. We didn't get a lot of them. And this kind of goes into kind of like my big criticism of the episode overall. And it's been a thing that I was concerned about, where now they're just outright just taking a lot of scenes from the game and putting them right there. So I just remember all this dialogue, everything with Joel and Ellie in the car. We're seeing that here, with the magazine and her asking all these questions and Joel being uncomfortable. Like, all that is here, and it kind of expands on it. But I noticed for the action sequences in this episode, which there is much more action for those people who are complaining that episode 3 didn't have enough zombie killing, even though there was some zombie killing in that. This episode has a few more action scenes, and for me, they all kind of fell really flat. And especially like the one action scene that I remember from the game distinctly, which involves a car crash. And like how that all plays out and how vicious it is and how bloody it is. I don't know, they tried to replicate that, and they also changed some things as well. And to me, it just didn't have the same impact, the same visceral impact that sequence had. Everything, like the whole direction, the choreography I thought was not great. The editing for that didn't really stand out for me. They do something different with one of the Raider characters, which Joel and Ellie interact with. And I don't know, it kind of felt like a half measure. They didn't get as nasty and brutal as I thought they could have, especially when you compare it to the game. And again, I'm going in with just the game in mind, right? It's hard for me to separate that because the game is in fact so cinematic, and that was one of my biggest concerns with the show is like, are you going to be able to capture that? And for the most part, I feel like they have done it. My other big criticism, which was in episode 1, the second half, what I thought was a little weaker than the first half, was some of the CGI and the green screen they were using for these wide shots. Like, yeah, here there's a lot of wide shots, but those all really work for me. I thought I was like, oh, this is pretty good, where we get to see what the landscape is looking like after 20 years of this fungus infection taking over, and now just flora and fauna of taking over all these major formerly populated areas. Like that was good, but yeah, it was the action sequences that just didn't impress me at all. And even when we cut away from something that Joel may be doing to someone, I was like, I mean, in the game they would have showed that, and so that took away a lot of the impact of this episode. I do feel like, and it's the one that felt like the most kind of like, all right, standard, we're just getting back to it. Again, that's why I felt like those sequences in the games where we're just going from building the building with Joel and Ellie, because they are literally going from building the building, hiding, collecting things, and they have like these brief conversations and moments, and it felt very similar to that, and like I like that. But anytime there was action in this, I don't know, it left me wanting. I thought it was a little sloppy, and that's been my biggest concern, going forward, where I know there's like a lot of action that is going to be happening, later on. And some of those moments are like some of my favorites in the game, especially everything that takes place in the winter. I was like, okay, how are you going to handle that? Because that is like very vicious, very visceral, very well choreographed. And what I saw in this episode let me down. And it's frustrating, although there's a lot to appreciate about it. Again, I think Pedro Pascal and Belle Ramsey, their chemistry is on point. I really like how they're building up this relationship. It's cool that they're trying to humanize the Raiders a little bit, and like it's a little different. They're just not, just guys in football gear that Joel and Ellie have to, stab and shoot. It's like, no, we're gonna give them some humanity, and so when things inevitably horrible happen to them, it's like, oh shit, you might feel something, right? But seeing some of that action, some of that choreography just left me wanting. I was like, this isn't great. And the editing didn't work for me either. So, very short review just because of the fact that that's really all that's happening. I've actually really appreciated that they've in the show, which just sounds so weird, sounds contradictory to what I normally say about video game adaptations. Is like, stop, just adapt that, scene to scene. But I actually like that they've changed so much, because that's been the most interesting thing for me as a viewer, someone who is so intimately aware of the entire story of that game and how certain things play out. To see what they've added, I think for the most part has been excellent, at the very least excellent. And so here, where it felt just so much like the game, I don't know, it was a little slow. I want to say boring. I don't want to say that, because I think that sounds harsh or dull. But I also say, okay, we're just kind of going through the rigmarole here, and we're getting these nice little personal moments between Joel and Ellie. But yeah, all the action in this, I was like, not great. So I'm hoping they can improve that going forward, especially with some of the characters we're eventually going to be introduced to. I think the next episode is going to be a big one, obviously with the characters of Henry and Sam, and something else they kind of set up towards the latter half of this episode. I was like, oh, that's going to be a problem. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that. And I'm hoping for the best. But yeah, Chad, I think this is the weakest episode so far of the series. I mean, it was going to come to that point, eventually. Like there's going to be one that's like, yeah, that was okay. Again, not terrible. not horrible. It has some good moments, but it does have a few issues, particularly with the action, choreography, and the editing. But what about you guys? How did you feel about The Last of Us episode 4? Did you have the same issues that I had? Did you actually like this episode? You know, for people that may not have liked the third episode, not because, you know, it's focusing on two gay guys. Gay people exist! I know, it's controversial, right? But because maybe it didn't focus so much on Joel and Ellie, and it was more of focused on two supporting characters. I mean, let me know. I'm very, very curious to hear people's overall thoughts on this particular episode.